Dr. Davis Morgan here. Welcome to another episode of Teeth and Tunes. Today we have a guest, our youngest guest to date, Dr. Josh Meadow.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here and excited to talk about teeth and tunes.
Okay, yeah, we're excited about it too. Looking forward to maybe doing a little tunes a little later.
Yeah.
So Josh, you're here in Lubbock now, and looking at a sole proprietor type situation, practice ownership. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate it. So my path to dentistry started when I was pretty young. So I was big into sports growing up, and I kind of got injured quite a few times. And in high school, I decided I needed to find something else to do. So I decided that I was going to start studying and figuring out what to do with my future. Instead, I figured out that my high school had a dental assisting program. So you could go through your junior and senior year of high school, and you can get your RDA license, and you can effectively work throughout your junior and senior year. It was basically a clinical hours, got 4 hours a day to go work in offices and all of that. So I started trying and applying to that program, and I fortunately got in. And after about 6 months in the program, I got my license and I started assisting in various offices. I worked in some corporate offices that, wasn't a huge fan of. And then eventually I made my way into a private practice oral surgery office as an assistant. And I met some really great mentors there who really encouraged me to, continue on and go to dental school and do all those things. So by the time I graduated high school, I'd already been an RDA for about a year and a half. The very first office I worked in, like I said, I was developing film x-rays in a dark room. So that tells you how long ago that was.
I remember the day. So, and you're talking about a high school program. You're from the Seguin area, right?
Correct. So yeah, I started off in Seguin area, and then I did my high school years in San Antonio. So I went to my 8th grade class in Seguin was 8 people. And my freshman class in San Antonio was 1,400 people. Okay. So it was a bit of a paradigm shift and a culture shock. But there were lots of cool programs like that I was able to kind of get my foot in the door.
That is really cool. I had a couple of patients in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that participated in a program similar to that. I don't believe that they were able to achieve dental assisting license, but both went on. One went the medical path, ended up going medical, but our patient's daughter, she's a practicing dentist now back in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah. So it was a huge blessing to land in that program. And then from there I went to Texas Tech, and, that's how I started to learn about Lubbock and call Lubbock home. Right. I met my wife the first semester here at Tech, and she's from here, born and raised. All her family is here. Okay. So graduated Tech, went to dental school at A&M in Dallas, and then graduated and couldn't wait to come back to West Texas and practice dentistry. So all through undergrad as well, I worked as a dental assistant at other offices here in Lubbock. Wow. So I always was part-time part-time dental assistant throughout all of my years of education outside of dental school. But yeah, I had the pleasure of working with Dr. Rob Iapolo. I'm sure you know him.
I do.
So I was his dental assistant for quite a lot of years, over 2 years while I was an undergrad. And then I went off to dental school, and now I'm back.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. So you mentioned, you had the opportunity to work in both a corporate setting and a private practice setting. What would you say the biggest contrast there is?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Yeah, having the experience of both before I was the dentist, I feel it was very valuable because I really got to, even with how I treat my assistants, I really get to see all the varying degrees that can happen. But yeah, the biggest contrast I would say is just like the amount of time you get to spend per patient and the value that patient feels they got out of that, because everyone values the time of their doctor or dentist or whoever. Nobody likes to sit in a waiting room for a long time. No one likes to sit in a treatment room for a long time. Nobody likes to do all of that and then the doctor walk in and give them a 30-second explanation and head right out. And I saw a lot of that in the corporate setting. And a lot of, as an assistant, a lot of that came back onto me, like having to coach the patients through everything and kind of fill in all the blanks for the short explanation they got from the doctor. If that makes sense. And then private practice, it's a lot different than that. And I think that's the value in it to people, is that they really get a lot of one-on-one time with their doctor. At least, certain philosophies of practice are like that. And I try to let mine be more like that.
So you mentioned that the private practice that you had the opportunity to work into, I think before you came to Lubbock, was an oral surgery practice there in the San Antonio area.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gave you, that's what opened their eyes up. Do you credit that experience with your drive to want to be an entrepreneur, a practice owner versus working with a corporation?
Yeah, I think that it definitely played a huge purpose. I honestly thought that I was going to be an oral surgeon, when I was in those younger years and working in those offices. And even through my first year of dental school, I was dead set I was going to be an oral surgeon. And then I just got into clinical dentistry, and there's so many aspects of it I enjoy. And I've really, I grew throughout dental school to embrace the general aspect of general dentistry. I like that. Tomorrow morning I have root canal and crown, and then have some extractions. Then Thursday I'm converting fixed hybrids, and there's just a lot of freedom in that. And I really like being able to decide what I do.
That is nice to be able to do a variety of things. Would you say that you've just entered into ownership, right?
Yes.
And this is hot off the press, right?
Yeah, this is hot off the press. So this has been a few months in the making. That's a kind of interesting story all in and of itself. So essentially I worked in a different office for a few years here in Lubbock, and I decided for various reasons that I was ready for change. And I had reached out to some friends of mine, and I got a call, and they're like, "Hey, call this person." And I called him on a Sunday evening, and on Monday morning we got breakfast at 6:30 a.m. And that week I put in my notice where I was working, and then the next 2 weeks later I was working with this individual. And flash forward a month, he reveals his plan that he's leaving Lubbock entirely. And he wanted to kind of have a trust building exercise for the first month or so and see how it was going. And then he asked me if I wanted to buy the practice. So we started that process about 3.5 months ago now.
Okay.
And closing date is now in just over 2 weeks from today.
Fantastic. That's a great story, man. That's a lot of action. Coming at you fast, right? No
kidding. Yeah. I can't even comprehend kind of the way it's all happened. If you would have told me 7 months ago, where in the position I was at then, that I would be owning a practice 7.5 months later, there's no way I would have believed you, especially a practice of this caliber. And I work with a ton of wonderful staff, and it's a wonderful practice. So it's just a huge blessing. God opened many doors for everyone involved, I think.
So do you stay in touch with a lot of classmates?
Interestingly, not a whole lot. I wish that I did keep up with more of them, but there's a handful of classmates I keep up with. There's really one or two really close friends that I had in dental school that I keep up with regularly. But my experience in dental school is, I don't know, I think I was in that weird group where I had a wife and a kid. And it's like those people were kind of friends with one another, but they also didn't have time to be friends with one another. So I was kind of like in my own little one-man wolf pack situation. And throughout my dental school years, I developed a few close friends, but it's always been me and my family, has been my priority all through the years.
Well, one of the reasons why I ask you that is because going through dental school, and as you guys were getting close to the end and trying to think about what you were going to be doing, what would you say the prevailing attitude was as far as being able to one day own your own practice or go to work for corporate America What are you seeing as a prevailing thought there?
Yeah, I think that's a interesting question. I think in 2025 nowadays, I think a lot of people graduating dental school really don't think ownership is in the cards like it used to be. I think 30 years ago, everybody, that was the plan. You know, they're like, I'm going to just get out of school and I'm going to start my own practice, and it's going to take 6 months or a year, but it'll be worth it. And now I don't think it's quite working like that. And I think most people leave dental school 100% anticipating to work an associate position for a large number of years before that opportunity arises. And part of that I understand now a lot more, like the process that it has been to be able to, you know, get into ownership has been crazy intensive, and
Yes.
And even just, you know, it's been invasive too. It's like everything about me is out there in the bank's hands and in this broker's hands and whatever. So I kind of get it now a little bit more, but also it's discouraging for the younger dentists out there to think that, hey, this isn't possible for me. I need to achieve X, Y, and Z before this is even a possibility. And it's not necessarily the case, but it's definitely the mentality these days.
I understand. What area of you're young in your journey? I know about 5 years in, for me, I was looking for something different. I was not really enjoying my career choice, and the common denominator of several individuals that I talked to with was, you need to do more continuing education. And so I began that journey. Yeah. Have you started any of that? And what areas interest you? I know personally for me, I needed to know how to run a business.
Yeah.
And I probably spent the first few years trying to learn as much as I could about business because I didn't really have a clue. So what about you?
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar boat where I've very much been focusing in on kind of all of those business aspects of dentistry as well. Really trying to like prepare myself for all of that responsibility that comes with owning a practice. There's many areas of dentistry. It's like, you know, they say dental school isn't over until 2 years after dental school. You know, they like to say that whenever you're in school. And it does feel a little bit like that. I can't believe how much I've learned over the 2 years of being the captain of the ship, you know, from the treatment perspective, rather than having someone looking over my shoulder. I feel like I've learned a ton, and I'm thankful for all the knowledge I've gained, but I don't think I've had the opportunity yet, because I've been worried about all this ownership stuff, to really dive into continuing education. Mm-hmm. But I really do lean into my mentors. Fortunately, through so many years of assisting, I have a huge number of very talented and intellectual individuals on my side of the court that I get to work with and learn from. And just like I did back then before school, I constantly lean into those people and trying to learn more from them and gain knowledge. So even like my relationship with Dr. Iapolo back then as his assistant has followed us through all these years, and we work very closely on a whole lot of cases, and we do a lot of fixed hybrid restorations together. And pretty much no classmates I'm aware of really have done as many fixed hybrids as I have. And it's all just been born out of that mentorship that he's had with me, that trust he's put into me, and us just getting lunch together so many times a month and just talking through things and learning things together. And it's been a huge blessing. So I think I've, in this season of life, really leaned into my mentors more so than these continuing education courses. I've done Spear Study Club and Seattle Study Club, and I love those and learning little bits. But the next step will be to get more involved in something more like Pankey Institute, or something where I can really dive deep into other topics.
I know for me, I did pursue a lot of things about business systems, taking the team, trying to get everybody on the same page. Part of my frustration and where I did start making a change was learning how to do the dentistry, the more complex care. And I didn't have necessarily any mentors. I did have some colleagues, some dentists that had graduated a few years ahead of me. It looked like they were being successful. And like I said, when I would go and visit with them, then there was a common denominator there of quality continuing education. You mentioned the Pankey Institute, and certainly I started with Dr. Pete Dawson and then went through the Pankey Institute and later had the opportunity to study implant dentistry with Dr. Mish and ended up out in Seattle with Dr. Coyce. But I know that I did have to put myself out there a little bit because I didn't have those relationships. So as I began that journey, there was a strong connection with Dr. Dawson and with the Pankey Institute there in the Dallas area. And so there were several older dentists that I was introduced to, and they were so gracious. Particularly one, the late David Hildebrand, and he was a guest instructor at the Pankey Institute, very involved with them. But at least once a month, I mean, his office was about 45 minutes away from mine up the Dallas Tollway. But I would, back then, nothing was digital, and I would take a milk crate, the thing they could put 4 gallons in, and with models and charts, with X-rays that we had developed in the dark room. You mentioned that, and things, and go, and he did mentor me. I feel like with some of the things I see online today, though, I feel like that some of the younger dentists out there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't really understand mentorship. I mean, mentorship, like what you've developed with Dr. Apollo and others, where you can actually talk cases that are going, is one thing, but to tell you how to prep multiple crowns or things like that. And some of the things that I see on social media, I know my wife follows some of that closely as well. And it's almost like they want an AGD residency type thing after dental school, that they consider that mentoring. But to me, I consider that teaching, which I'm not opposed to. It just seems like the definition has been a little skewed. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah,
I kind of agree. Strangely enough, in this information age, it's like you can learn anything on YouTube, but so many things on dentistry. Not that I want to learn my dentistry on YouTube, but my point is, I think there's a little bit of gatekeeping that goes on in the dental education community, and they really like to put these huge price barriers between these really information dense courses. Like I've found that through like trying to learn more about fixed hybrid dentistry. It's not super easy to come by information on fixed hybrids unless you go to a course. I've learned almost everything from working under a mentor, like I said, and there's so much value in that. But it's like even the books and the courses I found on it, one, either very specific or very expensive, or two, they're they kind of lead you to, here's some information, but if you want to learn more, let's do a course on it. And it's great. Everyone needs to make money somehow and make a business out of whatever they teach. But I do think it is hard to come by some specialized information within the dental field, specifically, which is strange to me in this age of information.
Right. I understand what you're saying. And that was a bit of a barrier for me because, in the early days, we didn't have a lot of excess cash. The cash flow was tight. And so you really had to think about what specifically did I want to learn the next year and seek that out. And even at the point that I did the Mish Institute, that was $20,000 back then, and you could take patients out there, but you're paying for your patient, all that. And I'd had enough positive experience by going to places like the Pankey Institute and studying with Dr. Dawson as well, that the proof was in the pudding, so to speak. And I knew that it would get my practice to that next level. And Dr. Dawson always liked to talk about that with each change that you implement, there's going to be some chaos. And then once you get that system down, and that was one of his strong encouragements to all of his attendees back then was to don't try to do all of this at once. Kind of like, when you pick your continuing education or anything, it's like pick the few things that are kind of the key concepts, start with those, and then build upon it. So do you have, if you could, what area of like dentistry, like technology and stuff, that's changing so rapidly. What area of that is exciting for you and that you would like to, if you don't already incorporate it, that you would like to incorporate?
Yeah. So the thing I'm most excited for is 3D printing in dentistry. I've been a hobbyist 3D printer. Like I've owned my own little hobby grade 3D printers that you build on a kit from eBay or whatever. I've had those for, 8 or 9 years. And over those 8 or 9 years, it's changed from just being something you could kind of geek out in your office with to now we're printing fixed hybrids and night guards and all our study models, and we're digital scanning. And it's really kind of a neat thing to me to see how that technology has changed just since I've been kind of invested in it. So I recently was able to get a Sprint Ray printer, and we've had an intraoral scanner. So that's kind of what I'm really hyper fixated on right now, is just trying to figure out how I can adapt what I've been doing and incorporate that into what I've been doing.
That's a good thing to be hyper fixated on, because that is your data acquisition, and that's where that process starts. So those are good things to be involved with. I know that I keep waiting for all this technology. You have these different companies coming on board that have not had any foray into dental, because anytime they stick dental, I was telling a friend, a non-dentist friend, this the other day about a little tool I was using. I'm like, you put dental on that and it automatically goes up like quadruples in price, right?
Yeah.
But I'm hoping that as we see this, it is changing rapidly. I mean, resins are changing, printers are coming out, new technologies, and I hope to see that would be more competitive, and hopefully it won't all be gobbled up under one or two big umbrella companies, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I made the similar joke with a patient last week. Actually, I was tightening an implant screw, and he said, "That looks like a torque wrench like I use on my car." Said, "It's exactly that. It's just shrunken down. But if you think Snap-on is expensive, you should see how much these things cost."
Exactly. Right. They got nothing on that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I hope the same thing. I hope there's competition in the market and advancements in the market that can lower the costs, because right now that is a huge barrier of entry to I think everyone. And I think there's a whole older generation of dentists who kind of refuse to make the leap into that because it's such a huge upfront cost.
It is. And especially I do feel for the younger guys, because I know that the cost of the dental education has just continued to rise.
Yeah.
And so everyone comes out of dental school now with a lot of debt, and then trying to factor in continuing education for yourself, some type of education for your team, so you can all, you've got to develop your systems and things, and it adds up. It adds up really fast.
It really does.
So I don't envy that. I know my first office, a dentist had gone bankrupt. There was some core equipment still in there, and I literally needed, like, all I could get was an SBA loan if I didn't have anyone co-sign for me, which I was dead set against that. I started that practice on a $35,000 SBA loan.
Wow.
Talking about a shoestring budget. But, we made it. We made it work. Yeah. And fortunately, like I said, there was probably at that time at least $175,000 worth of equipment, core equipment that was still functional, and so we made it work, and grew. But I think you've got your sights set on the right things, and it's my experience with private ownership has been that if you plan it out, chart it out, you'll be far more successful and happy than you would working for someone else. Yeah. I know that corporations and some of your classmates, I know some of mine, they're perfectly satisfied with that. And there's a place. I don't mean to dog corporate dentistry. There's a place for it.
Yeah.
But it just don't get the opportunity to build those relationships with your patients and that type of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely see the same thing. There are a surprisingly large handful of my classmates who do work in the corporate dentistry setting, and they have nothing bad to say about it. And they love it, and they plan to do it for a very long time. And like you said, it's not like it's something we're trying to dog on or anything like that. But it's definitely different strokes for different folks, sort of thing. Right. I can't see myself in that setting at all. I've always strived for ownership and to just have control over the business that I work at. And I've wanted that since I started assisting all those years ago. So yeah, I think that's
and that leads into, at some point we can talk about it more, but fee for service. And I know I feel certain you probably have some involvement with PPOs and things. And again, that's not a bad thing. But I know once I was able to break away from that, I was even more successful and just happier. And really, I felt like that's when I really started to be able to bond with my patients more.
Yeah, for sure.
I have to ask the question, and since this is, like I said, this is hot off of the press, right, that you are acquiring this practice in such a short period of time, have you thought about the name?
So I have. Yep. So by the time this airs, the name won't have changed yet, but the name that I'm working with right now is Matador Dental. I'm a Red Raider. Cool. I'm a Red Raider, and I think it would be cool to pay homage to Texas Tech. And also, kind of funny enough, it's like only 2 letters different than my last name, which is Meador. So True. Matador and Meador. I thought that was kind of neat.
That's very cool. Now, you've thought about this for a while, because you said we were talking earlier before we started. You like own the domains and stuff for that.
I do, yeah. So I've filed for pretty much everything to own that name so that nobody could steal it from me. So that's been my working name for a while. Of course, I lean into my mentors. So I've yet to run it by all my mentors and see what they think. But to me, I think it's a practice name. As an associate who's worked for multiple practices named after the senior doctors, it's always been a challenging thing for me because patients sit in my chair and they're like, wait, you're not the senior doctor? And they like instantly think it's a downgrade. Good point. And as an associate for a few years of doing that, it's important to me knowing that the practice I own is a 2-doctor practice. I want whatever person I hire to not have to feel that instant point of friction with a patient of feeling like they got a downgrade just because the name on the building isn't the name of the doctor treating them at that moment. So that's one of the things that's been in the back of my head. So that's why I wanted more of a branded name. And then that's just the name that I've landed on for some reason or another.
Well, and I'm sure as you've gone through this process of the financial process, you've worked with a accountant and other financial professionals, and I'm sure they will tell you that there are more advantages to being incorporated. And it's not, in Texas, it's not an expensive proposition to form a corporation. And that's really my hats off to you for thinking forward with that. A number of years ago, I had my practice for about half of my practice in the Metroplex. The time I spent there, about half the time I was there, was under my name. And at one point I realized, before I had even envisioned moving out to Lubbock, that I didn't really need my name on that plaque out there. My mother had a hard time with that, bless her heart. But anyway, I went ahead and changed that. I could see that things were starting to trend that way, and I felt like that would be a good thing to do. Plus, we went ahead and changed up our corporation structure a little bit, and I know that's had some tax and financial advantages for us. So good job.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
So guns up, everyone. Now let's get to the interesting stuff. You are a musician as well, right?
I am aspiring, I would say, but yes.
Well, when I hear you play it, I aspire to play that well one day.
Well, thank you.
I will say. So, do you see a common thread in the artistic side of music and the creation of music, and dentistry? What you do in dentistry?
Yeah, that's a interesting question. I definitely think that they appeal to similar parts of my brain. There's something about dentistry where you really get to be creative, even in little ways, and there's some artistry to it as well, which is cool. And dentistry is one of those things that, when I'm doing it, it's like there's nothing going on in my brain other than what I'm doing. And there's very few things in life I can do like that. I have a busy brain, lots of white noise going on in there. And something about dentistry, I really can focus in on what I'm doing and tune out all of that white noise. Music is that same sort of outlet for me, but, outside of work, it's pretty much the only thing I can do that I'm not in the back of my mind thinking about all these other things, thinking about my work day, thinking about what's ahead, thinking about my calendar, all these things. Music really helps me tune out. And then I think a lot of creativity stems from that, in that, I really get to break free from all the taxing things going on in my mind and just kind of make music. And I think that's fun. And I hope to get back into my music making days like I was, a couple of years ago, more so, but yeah, it will come.
It will come. I'm actually taking some online lessons from an instructor. Shout out to Brett Blakemore with Summit Guitar, and he's trying to help me unlock the fretboard a little bit and just learn how to play. I always just played by ear, so started very young age. How old were you when you began playing?
I started playing in 8th grade, so I was about 14. And my brother had always played guitar, and then I took interest in his guitar. He's like, this is too nice for you. So he bought me a guitar, which was really nice of my older brother to do.
That is.
And yeah, I just ran with it. I just played all through high school. I've kept up with it really up until I had kids, and now I get to play it selectively.
Right.
But I played it very religiously through high school and through, college and even dental school, surprisingly, because exactly what I was explaining. It was really an outlet for me to get my brain off of all the other busyness that I had going on in life.
It is. It's a great outlet. I started playing a little bit earlier, maybe about 4 or 5 years before that, but you won't be able to tell if you listen to me play, but I've always enjoyed that. And then, you alluded to your high school days and playing a lot of sports, particularly football and things. I went to a small West Texas school here at Seagraves High School, graduated in 1980, home of the Fighting Eagles. And we were active in all UIL activities. My dad was a high school principal, and he insisted that my brother and I participate in just about everything, choir, band, you name it. But at that time, we had a great group of educators and leaders, and all the kids. We just enjoyed it, and it was fun. But being in choir and being in band, I just learned so much appreciation for all genres of music. I've always leaned towards rock and roll. My dad wanted me to play country western, and that might have been a better pathway for me. I don't know, but I like rock and roll. And as I got older, I got into blues. So my wife likes to joke that I have blues albums and I have blues albums and blues albums. But no, but basically classic rock and that. But I do enjoy country and some other music. What genres are you most interested in and enjoy?
Yeah. Yeah, people are usually shocked. So I'm actually like really like a rock. Rock is definitely the very softest of my genres. I listen to a lot of really like heavy metal music, and it's really kind of hilarious. My wife laughs at me all the time because it's like I'll pull up from work and I'm like blasting the loudest, heaviest music ever, and then I get out of the car and I'm in scrubs and playing with my kids, and it just matches my brain. My brain's energy is very chaotic, and metal music matches that pretty well. And yeah, I listen to a lot of metal mainly.
And that's what you play a lot we were plunking around a little bit before we got started on this, and you said a lot of what you play is in a drop C tuning, and and I know our sound engineer Brandon Smitherman, he was a thrash metal crazy maniac man at one point in his life, as well. So I'm sure you guys can really bond. And your guitar is, you were talking about your guitar. Tell us a little bit about your guitar.
Yeah, so this, I was telling you, kind of joking around, before I got this guitar, I was in this cycle of constantly buying new guitars. Like I always wanted a new guitar. And then finally, I had a friend who had a custom guitar made, and he's like, man, it was exactly what I wanted. And, I didn't have to do that anymore. So I had a collection of like 8 guitars, and I sold like 6 of them literally to be able to pay for this custom shop guitar. And I got it custom ordered, and I waited the 6 months it took and checked my email every single day for 6 months, just hoping it would somehow ship. And finally I got it. It's a Kiesel custom shop out of California, and they still do a lot of, handcrafting to their custom instruments as well. But I got to spec out everything from the fret color to the fretboard radius, the woods, whether they're roasted or not roasted. I got to choose everything.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I
once I have to look into that. My wife is going to be really disappointed that you had to come over and tell me that.
She's going to regret having me on this podcast, I bet. But yeah, ever since I got it, it's pretty much the only guitar I play. I literally pulled my other guitar out of the closet like 2 days ago, because I'm like, I wonder if this thing even still has strings on it. It's been so long since I had played it. But yeah, it's great. It's a Kiesel Aries custom 6-string. So
very cool. What are those pickups? And is it humbuckers?
So
or
Kiesel also has a custom pickup line, and these are beryllium wound pickups.
Oh, cool.
And they're not the heaviest like lithium style pickups. They're not super heavy like that, because I also play a lot of prog rock and really shreddy stuff, and these kind of match kind of right in between the stuff that I like. Nice.
So you mentioned listening to metal groups and things like that. Who's your favorite all-time band? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think for me, it's a band called Artificial Language. They have a guitarist named Charlie Robbins, he's like a flamenco classical trained guitarist that makes, metal music through like a prog rock sort of band. And man, they have the best riffs. Everything about their music I love. And I actually had an opportunity to get lessons, from Charlie Robbins during COVID. And it was like a dream come true. I could only afford like 6 because I was in dental school, but I saved up and I, had those 6 lessons, and it was pretty life-changing for me, and making music and playing guitar. It was kind of one of the coolest things I've ever done.
That's really cool. That's a great story. Love that. Well, do you have any new music, new artists that are up and coming that you're excited about?
Yeah, it's a good one. I have to think about that one. I'm really bad with names because I cycle through new music all the time. Like I'm just constantly clicking on new bands, and I'm listening to an album once or twice and then move on from there. There's, bands that are really popular that I've liked as well. Like there's one called Sleep Token. Like if you look into anything in the world of metal music, Sleep Token's all over it. And they really kind of blend all the genres and have some hip hop, and then they have some really heavy in there. And even my wife, who has strictly put up with metal for the 10 years we've been together, she is a big Sleep Token fan. So I am also a Sleep Token fan, because that's the one band in 10 years I've convinced her to like. Very nice. There's lots of interesting bands though. Yeah, it's a hard one. Between the Buried and Me is like one that I really love, all sort of bands.
Well, I'm going to have to explore those. I know that I have not ever really ventured down that path very far. I know about as heavy, as dark as I would get. It was like Nirvana. I'm a huge Foo Fighter fan.
Yeah.
And I guess Metallica. But even in their heyday, I wasn't a big Metallica guy. I was more into ZZ Top and Eric Clapton and those guys,
Yeah, I think for me too, I started with all that same, like the classic rock stuff, and I always led into more and more challenging music to play on the guitar. And it just, for some reason, the stuff I enjoyed playing on the guitar, the very technical, fun stuff, ended up being heavier and heavier. And my tastes just went down that path because that's what I enjoyed playing on the guitar. But my wife also laughs because a huge fraction of the music I listen to is fully instrumental. Like even the really heavy music and everything, there's no vocals at all because really for me, I'm just listening to the guitar and the musical aspects of it.
There's been some cool research on that. I can't cite the name of it now, but a number of studies have shown that the instrumental, I can talk, instrumental music, and whether it's classical or rock or otherwise, it helps your brain. Mm-hmm. You can kind of focus on that. I know, I mentioned my son, he's a musician in Austin. He also went to med school and things. And when he was really studying, even though he, loved to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, that kind of stuff, when he was intently studying on something, if I came in and he would be listening to some, like synthesizer type music. It was totally, the first time I heard that, I'm like, what are you listening to?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, it helps me focus.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm the same way. I like in dental school, I listened to like every movie soundtrack ever, like Hans Zimmer, like all those really classical composers like that. It's one of my favorite things to listen to as well. I listen to a lot of instrumental music in general, but if I'm turning something on in my truck and it's just me, it's always going to be metal. So
yeah. Okay. Well, I tell you what, I think we've covered a pretty wide variety of topics here on dentistry and music. So really appreciate you being our guest on the show. Looking forward to the drop of the podcast when we do this here in a couple of more months. So
yeah, thank you so much
again.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll break out the guitars here in a minute. Maybe do a little bit of make a little noise. How's that? Does that sound all right?
I like making noise. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll be back.